Hi, Integrated Math 1. Welcome to lesson 5.1.1a. We're going to start digging into constructions today. So in addition to having your workbook out, we're starting on page M5-7. There are a couple other things you're going to want as well. You are going to want a compass. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So if you have a compass, pull that out. You're going to need it. And the other thing you're going to need is a straight edge. I have just a little ruler, but any kind of nice straight edge will do the job. It'll work for you, but you need one of these as well. So you need these two lovely items before you even get started. So if you haven't grabbed those yet, hit pause and go grab them. I presume by now you've grabbed them. So we're on page M5-7. Now, we are going to be doing constructions. We're actually going to be building things today. And you'll notice I have my extra camera over here today so that you guys will be able to see my work a little bit better. So our learning goals over the next few days, we're going to be using our construction tools to duplicate a line segment. We're also going to construct a perpendicular line segment and bisector. We won't use the patty paper so much as we will use a compass and a straight edge that's coming up. There's also the option to construct a square inscribed in a circle using patty paper and using a compass and straight edge. I'm not sure that we'll get to that, but it's an option, something to think about. So we have a whole bunch of key terms here. I've got a whole bunch of key terms, and we're not even going to hit all the key terms in your book. These are just the ones that we're going to cover in the next 2 lessons. So we are going to cover terms like sketch, draw, construct, compass, straight edge, midpoint, segment bisector, perpendicular bisector, conjecture. These are all terms we're going to cover. So a coordinate plane is actually a measuring tool that you've used to create geometric figures, right? We have our coordinate plane, our x-axis, y-axis, and basically the coordinate plane is a measuring tool, right? We can measure this many units to the right, this many units up, all that good stuff. So how can we construct figures in a plane without using measuring tools, without a coordinate plane? There's a way to do it. So if you come over to page M5-8, just bringing it back and explaining what we're doing here. So you may remember that when you were younger, you learned to estimate with counting numbers, right? You learned how to count. And accuracy wasn't really important, right? We didn't worry about bits and pieces. We just learned counting numbers. Then you learned to count and operate with whole numbers and fractions, right? We started to bring in fractions to determine exact amounts, to be a little more precise, a little more accurate. So for example, you could calculate that 2 times 5 plus 2 times 3 is the same as 2 times 8, right? Or 16. Even later, we learned how to reason even more accurately without the numbers, right? We started throwing in variables. So we could say that A times B plus A times C equals A times the quantity B plus C. So again, we just went a step further and a step further and a step further and a step further. That's kind of what's happening here. Creating and thinking about geometric objects is similar, right? When you sketch a geometric figure, you just create the figure without tools, right? I just take my pencil, I draw a square. Great. Accuracy wasn't real important when you were first learning about squares. Now we've started taking it to the next level. When you draw geometric figures, you can use tools like a ruler or a protractor, right? Make sure you have that, use your protractor, you have it at 90 degrees, use a ruler to make sure that sides of the square are all the same length, right? And we use rulers and protractors or even a coordinate plane to draw exact lengths and angles. Now, we're removing those measuring tools. So finally, when you construct geometric figures, you create exact figures without using measurements. You can use patty paper, but more importantly, we're going to use a compass and a straight edge. I'm not even going to be using the markings on this ruler. I'm just using the straight edge of it. So along with, of course, geometric reasoning. So a compass is a tool that's used to create arcs and circles, right? It has a pointy bit, it has a pencil bit, and you use the pointy bit to hold it in place, and you can make arcs. You can go all the way around and make circles with it. It's really cool. And a straight edge is usually a ruler without numbers. So this side is a ruler, but this side doesn't have any numbers. I just want that straight edge, right? This is all I'm going for, is that straight edge. So the midpoint of a segment, and again, I know we're jumping around a bit, page M5-10, the midpoint of a segment is exactly what it sounds like. The midpoint of a segment is the point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. It's the middle of the segment. It takes your segment and it's the point in the exact middle, divides it into two congruent segments. So let's first just investigate how to determine the midpoint of a segment using a measuring tool such as a ruler. So can you take just a moment to draw and label the midpoint of a segment using a ruler? Use the numbers, all right? And explain how you identified the midpoint. So just hit pause, draw a segment, find the midpoint of it, use your numbers on your ruler to help you do that, and just explain what you did. Go ahead and hit pause, work that out, hit play to keep going. So I'm going to show you how I can draw one of these. Hang on. Boo, there it is. So you can see my paper here. There it is. And so I'm going to use a ruler, and I'm just going to use my lovely ruler here, and I'm going to just make a line segment. So here's a line segment. Please notice that a line segment has endpoints, not arrows going forever and ever. Here's a lovely line segment. And if I wanted to determine the middle of it using a ruler, using my measurements, I can see that this line segment is, you get the idea. I can see that this line segment, if it goes from 5 to 9, I can see that it's 4 inches long. So that means if I cut 4 in half of 4 is 2, so 2 inches, boom, right there, there's my midpoint, right? And so I can totally use a ruler and I can use the measurements on it to draw the midpoint. That's a thing that we do. So we've drawn and labeled the midpoint of the segment. We did it using a ruler, and I basically just used the measurements, however long it was, I cut that in half, and that's where I put my midpoint. Yay. We're going to take this a step further though. A midpoint is actually a kind of segment bisector. So a segment bisector, instead of just being a point, a segment bisector is a line segment, array of some kind that divides a line segment into two line segments of equal length, right? It goes through the midpoint. So the basic geometric construction used to locate the midpoint of a line segment is called bisecting a line segment. So when we use our constructions to find the midpoint of our line segment, we just say that we're bisecting a line segment. So it's a segment bisector. We're cutting it into two congruent pieces. Now, you can totally use patty paper to do this. Patty paper is these little squares that are kind of see-through-ish. So one of the ways that you can do this is you can use patty paper, where we draw a line segment on the paper, and then we fold the paper. Because it's see-through, you fold it so that the end points of the line segment lie on top of each other. So you take a little patty paper, you fold it so that the end points are right on top of each other. Open the paper, and then the crease represents the segment bisector, and the midpoint is, of course, located where the crease intersects the line segment. It's important when you fold your patty paper to make sure that your points are right on top of each other, that your endpoints are. So with that in mind, here's Thomas. Thomas determined the midpoint of a line segment incorrectly. Can you explain to me what he did and why he messed up? Hit pause. Jot down your thoughts, hit play to keep the discussion going. So Thomas folded the patty paper, but he lined up the edges of the paper. He didn't line up the end points. Are you catching that? So Thomas folded the patty paper by aligning the corners of the paper, and he should have folded the patty paper so that the end points were on top of each other, because we can see that is not the middle of that line. So instead of lining up the sides of the paper, you need to make sure that you line up your end points on top of each other. That's going to help you find your midpoint. Now, we're not using patty paper today. We're going to construct a segment bisector using only a compass and a straight edge. So you make use of the fact that all the radii of a circle have an equal length, right? You know that on a circle, it doesn't matter where you're going from the center to the edge, your radius is going to be the same no matter what. So we're going to use that to our advantage. So we're going to construct an arc. I'm going to explain how you do it in the book, and then I'll show you how to do it on my other camera here, and then I'll let you guys have a stab at some of these. So first of all, you need to open the radius of the compass to more than half the length of the line segment. So here we have line segment AB, you can see it right there. And notice how we need to open up the compass so that it's more than halfway. Otherwise, this won't work. Your compass has to be open more than halfway. We use the end point, in this case A, as the center, and we construct an arc. So you put the pointy guy on your end point, and you will make a little arc. You keep the compass radius the same. So don't let this slide, don't let this slide. And then you flip it over and you put your pointy guy on point B. So you keep the compass radius and you use point B as the center as you construct another arc, swoop. And then you label the points formed by the intersection of the arcs, and we'll label them E and F in this case. And then, of course, connect the dots. That's where the straight edge comes in. I use my straight edge to connect the points where they intersect. Line segment EF is the segment bisector of segment AB. The point M represents the midpoint of AB. So line EF bisects AB, and point M is the midpoint of F. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to bust out my camera again. So I'm going to make a line segment, and I'm going to call it AB, and I'm not going to make it very big, but I do need to be able to see it. Oh, there we go. So I'm making a line segment. I'm a little crooked, aren't I? See if I can fix that. Oh, that's better. So I'm going to make a line segment. I'm not even paying attention to how long I'm making it. In fact, I'm going to use the other side of my ruler so I don't know. I'm just going to make a line segment. Pew. And we're going to call this A, B. So this is real simple to do. I'm going to put my pointy guy on A, and I'm going to make sure that my compass is more than half the length. I don't need it to be huge, but I need it to be more than halfway. So that looks like it's more than halfway. And then I'm just going to keep my pointy guy down, and you have to kind of use a couple hands here, and I'm going to make an arc. Oh dear, maybe I'll make an arc. I'm going to try to make an arc. So keep my pointy guy there, and I'm just going to make an arc. All right, I'm just gonna, woo. Now it's important I make the arc big enough that it's above and below my line. Now, don't let it slide. Don't let it slide, okay? Don't let it slide. Keep it the same. Keep it the same. Don't let it slide. And then I'm just gonna switch over to point B. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna make an arc. Just gonna swoop. There it is. So all I did was I made sure this was more than half the length of AB, and I just did on point A, make a swipe, and then don't let it slide. Go to point B, make another swipe. And notice, because we did that, my arcs intersect here and here. So we'll call those points E and F. And then I'm going to use my straight edge. It's straight edge time. So I'm just going to use my straight edge, and I'm just going to connect those. Boom. And this guy right here, that's your midpoint. Boom, look at that. How cool is that? So you're just gonna take your compass here and you're just gonna swipe, swipe, connect, midpoint, done. It's pretty snazzy, isn't it? Pretty snazzy. Let me come back over here. There we go. So I have a few little problems then for you to play with now that you've seen how this works. First of all, on page 12, question number 4, Aaron is determining the midpoint of RS. His work is shown. Aaron says that because the arcs do not intersect, this line segment does not have a midpoint. He's like, the arcs don't intersect. There's no midpoint. Kate disagrees and tells him he drew his arcs incorrectly and that he must redraw his arcs to determine the midpoint. Who's correct? And explain your reasoning. Hit pause. Jot down your thoughts. Hit play to check your work. So I don't know if you realized it or not, but Kate's right. There's a midpoint, right? There is a middle to this line somewhere. Aaron just needs to redraw his arcs. So Kate is correct. All line segments have a midpoint, right? Every line segment has a point that's in the middle. That has a point where you can bisect it into two congruent segments. So if the arcs do not intersect, Aaron needs to set his compass so that it's open more than half the distance between the two endpoints, and then redraw his arcs. Remember how I mentioned it was important that your compass is open more than halfway? This is why, Aaron. So he's going to need to open up his compass a bit more and redraw his arcs. So with this in mind, on page M5-12, I have like 3 of these on number 5. I've got A, I've got B, I've got C. I would like you to use your construction tools, only using a straight edge and a compass, not the ruler. We're not using the numbers, just straight edge and a compass. Make your arcs. I would like you to use your construction tools to locate the midpoint of each given line segment and then label those midpoints as M. Go ahead, hit pause, do A, B, and C, hit play when you're ready to check your work. So to make life easier, I have, I'm going to scoot this down a little bit. Whoa. I have all of the problems right here. So let's go ahead and do this then. You should have already done this, but let's find our midpoints. So I'm going to take my compass. I'm going to make, whoa, that's way big. That's way too big. I want to be more than halfway, but I don't need it to be like huge. So that's more than halfway. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to swing it. And don't let it slide, don't let it slide. Slip to side B, and I'm going to swing it again. Woo, just barely made it. I intersect here, I intersect here. I'm going to use my straight edge. And there's my midpoint. And I'm said to label it as M, so I'm going to call it M. Yay! Yours is probably prettier than mine. By the way, this is also why I tend to like the smaller rulers. They fit a little bit better. You can do this with C as well. So hang on, I'm going to make some adjustments here. There we go, so you can see it. It doesn't matter that it's sideways. The rule still works. I need to put my pointy end on C. I need to make sure that I'm more than halfway. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs to be more than halfway, right? And then I'm going to swipe it. Make one arc. Don't let it slide. Don't let it slide. Go over to D. And my other arc, I'm going to turn the paper. Sometimes it's easier than turning my compass. And look at that. Here, here. And if I connect them, it will give me my midpoint. And there's my midpoint M. Don't erase these lines that you're making. This is your work, right? When I tell you in math, you guys have to show your work. This is what I mean. Show your work, right? Show all your bits. Last but not least, part C. Let's see, can I get it in there? Yeah, I can get it in there. Awesome. So for part C, again, I want to make sure that I'm more than halfway. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs to be more than half. We already learned from Thomas it won't work otherwise. So pointy guy on one end and swipe. Don't let it slide. Don't let it slide. Pointy guy on the other end and swipe. There we go. And I can connect these. Oh, I didn't connect them very well. Hopefully you did a better job. There's my midpoint M. Yay! So it doesn't matter if it's sideways or diagonal or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm using a compass and a straight edge. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do my 2 swipes and then connect where they hit, and it's perfect. So don't erase the marks. Leave these marks. This is you showing your work, right? This is you showing your work. And it doesn't matter that it's sideways. Make your swipe, leave those marks. That's how I can see you guys are showing your work. And it doesn't even matter if it's diagonal. It didn't even matter. We did a swipe, we connected the dots. There's our midpoint. Now, I've got a special bonus question for you. Are you ready? I've got a special bonus. I think you can do it. I would like you to locate a point 1/4 the distance between point A and point B. Give it some thought, hit pause, see if you can do it. This one's trickier. Hit pause, see if you can do it, and then hit play when you're ready to check your work. So my thinking on this is that the midpoint is half halfway across my line segment, right? So a fourth would be half of a half. So I need to find the midpoint from my midpoint. Ah, okay. So let me bring my camera back up again. Boom, there it is. Hang on. Let's try to get this in here. I can do this. There we go. All right. So first I'm going to find the midpoint, and then I'm going to find the midpoint from the midpoint. So I'm going to put my pointy guy here. I need it to be more than halfway. I'm going to do my first arc. Woo. Don't let it slide. Put the pointy guy on B. Do my second arc. Woo. And if I connect the dots here, so there's my midpoint. Sorry, I had to move it so I could write on it. So there's my midpoint. Yay. But we said we didn't want the halfway point. We wanted 1/4 of the point. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this M for my midpoint. And I don't care which side you use. If you use this side, if you use that side, it doesn't really matter to me. Pick one. I'm going to go from A. I'm going to start on this side. So again, I want to be more than halfway from A to M. So I'm going to find the midpoint on this side. I'm going to totally ignore that side for the moment. I'm just going to find the midpoint here. So I want to be more than halfway. And I'm going to go ahead and swipe. This gets confusing, all these swipes. Don't let it slide. And I'm going to put my point on M. And I'm going to swipe again. Ooh, got a little sliding on me. So now I need to connect these. Use my straight edge. And there we go. I don't know. What do you want to call this point? Let's call it point P. That sounds good. Call it whatever you like. So point P is 1/4 of the way from 1/4 of the distance from A to B, because it's half the half. Now you can see this is not my best midpoint ever, and you guys will find that if your compass slides, it can get a little tricky. Now, and you could have done it on the other side instead. You could have done your midpoint on this side as well. That also would have been okay. But you get the point. Midpoint is halfway across, so 1/4 of the way across would be the midpoint from the midpoint. Yeah. As always, I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found this useful. If you got questions, concerns, come talk to me. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.